Welcome, everybody, and thank you all for being here. My name is Ronna Caras, and I am very honored to be speaking with my co-presenter and friend, Jonathan Gardner. My guess is you're going to learn a lot more from Jonathan than you're going to learn from me, because he is the real-world story of how supported decision-making fosters independence and growth. My role is to take what you learn from Jonathan and help you apply it to different people. People in your life who perhaps have different skills than you see in Jonathan's story, or different ideas, or different challenges, or different goals. And the way that I'm going to do that is share some steps, some procedures, some infographics, kind of the educational side. He'll tell you what he did and how it went, and then I'll show you how to do it yourselves. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay, great. We invite you to participate. If you have a question, tap your nose, raise your hand, share a thought. If you disagree with something you hear, I probably shouldn't speak for you here, Jonathan, but if you disagree with something, or something doesn't ring true to you, or you have a question, please let us know. Let's make this a dialogue, okay? This is one of the most important topics of perhaps this century. And I'm very excited and honored to start off with my friend, Jonathan Gardner. Please welcome Jonathan.
One sec, we have to go through a couple of these.
Oh, because I forgot. Forgot to tell you that we are...
You all worried about me doing this.
I just started talking and forgot that I was supposed to be a professional. What we wanted to let you know is we are not sharing legal advice with you. Okay, that was what that opening slide was. Now, here's Jonathan.
There we go. Hello, I am Jonathan Gardner. I am a 21-year-old self-advocate, decision maker, and homeschool graduate, cancer survivor who happens to have autism. I am an official ambassador for Operation House Call through the ARC of Massachusetts, a Flutie Fellow for the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation for Autism, the co-chair for Massachusetts Support Decision Making Coalition, a board member of Mass Advocates for Children. Since the age of 13, my vision has always been to help others in any way I can. I have many different types of support and supporters to help me live my best life. Supported decision-making allows certain adults like myself, which include those with disabilities and the elderly, to maintain their rights, dignity, and independence by choosing trusted supporters to provide assistance making decisions about our lives. Supported decision-making is an alternative to guardianship where the person, me, gets to be the CEO of their life. Supported decision-making does not replace guardianship, it just adds an option for people like me who don't need guardianship, but do need some support. I believe more options are better. I think we can all agree on that part.
Can everybody hear? Okay.
I think that would explain that, the fact they can hear me. This is how it works. I get to pick a group of people that I trust help me make decisions. I'm the decision maker in my life. I have used support decision making in my fight against cancer, my mental health, and most aspects of my life today. Support decision making my supporters help me, for example, using pros and cons lists to make decisions, but ultimately the decision is ultimately mine. So, how did I get started with this thing? Let me explain. When I was 16 and in school, my mother and I were told that I needed full guardianship. This didn't feel right for us. My mom had learned about support decision-making, and we decided to try it in my life. To me, support decision-making is another tool and choice that I have in my toolbox. I think schools should not pressure families into guardianship because there are a lot of other options people can use. There we go. Supported decision-making was a great alternative for me. I started by choosing my supporters. I decided on different people who would help me with different parts of my life. My first supported decision-making plan only included my mom, dad, and brother. But as I grew older, my plan has evolved, and I've added many other supporters to my team in different areas of my life. Because supported decision-making lets me keep my rights, I can change my own plan as my needs in life change over time. I'm the one in control of my life. I'm on the right page, right? Okay. In 2021, I was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, which is a rare form of cancer. This was during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. My luck, people. Hey, I gotta bring up some joy before we get into the gloomy stuff. I was already using supported decision-making in my life, so it gave me some comfort to know I would have support going through this new life journey. However, COVID-19 visitor restrictions made using supported decision-making harder. We had to advocate with the hospital to have my supporters with me at my appointments. A hospital should be required to respect supported decision-making as a way of accommodating people with disabilities and the elderly. It should be recognized as a right everywhere. Fighting cancer has been one of the hardest journeys of my life. I've been through a lot of hard journeys already. I'm so thankful I was given the freedom to choose how I go about my treatments. Having been able to use supported decision-making during my cancer journey was really life-saving for me and helped me make my own decisions while battling cancer. No, that's not me being dramatic. I just wanted to make that clear. I would not be the person I am today without supported decision-making. For example, when I was 6 months into chemotherapy and 2 weeks into radiation, I came home one day and my body and mind were feeling horrible and hopeless. I ended up in my bedroom crying and just really wanted to give up. I told my mom, I don't care what happens to me. I just want it to stop, even if it causes the tumor to kill me. My mom had to take time to process all this herself, but when she came back into my room, she came back not as my mom, but as my support person. She said to me, Jonathan, I do not know what the answer to this all is, but if you could put your faith in me as your support person, I'm going to try my hardest to help you figure this out. From there, I gave my mom the okay to contact my medical team, and together they all came up with a different plan for me to think about. After the meeting, I was able to talk to my supporters about the plan, get my questions answered, and then I agreed to move forward with it. The plan ultimately saved my life while also taking care of my mental health, all at the same time, thanks to supported decision-making. Supported decision-making truly makes me feel involved with my life. It provides me with choices about when and how I was going to receive my cancer treatments. Because of supported decision-making, I was able to let my body and voice guide me with the help of my supporters. I did not have many choices when it came to having cancer, but at least I was able to control when and how I got through it. Thanks to supported decision-making, I'm the one in control of my life, not a judge or a guardian. No offense if any of you are that in this room. If I was not able to pick my support people during my cancer treatments, I would just be a shell of myself right now, if I even survived. I'm the type of person that needs to have full trust in the people that are in my life. If someone else picked those people for me, I would not fully be able to be the person I am today. I need to make my own choices for my own life. If a guardian had forced me into treatments, I would have been severely depressed, damaged, and not the person I am today. Supported decision-making offers more options in my life. I firmly believe that supported decision-making gives people a choice for freedom and a choice of who supports them. Everyone should have the right to choose the way they want to live so they can live their best lives to the fullest. And I'll hand it back over to you, Rhonda.
Thank you. When we think about the people we love or the people that we support in our lives, living life to their fullest, is there a higher goal? So that's what inspires me so much about Jonathan's story and the work he is doing in support of supported decision-making.
Don't mind me, I'm just getting ready.
In case you have questions. So, I'm an instructional designer. I'm a trainer by profession. And I work for the Center for Guardianship Excellence. And does anyone know us? Know who we are? So we are a free training company. You can find us online and you can take any of our courses at no charge. And it's unusual, in addition to being free, being unusual, but what's really unusual is it's not about the kind of guardianship that people make movies about. It's about the way guardianship is supposed to be. That balance of the heart, the mind, and the laws. Some states have them, some states are lacking them, but the reality is that there are ways to be good guardians, and guardianship does belong in some people's lives, although, as Jonathan said, not everyone's. So my role at the center is to create the training, the tools, what we call job aids. And so what I'm going to share with you are some strategies, some facts, some strategies, some downloadable checklists, and they're all in your handout as well, that allows you to think about what you learned from Jonathan, or what else you know about the loved one, or your family, and what else you know about supported decision-making and guardianship, and work it all out. So you can organize a plan that makes sense for you. So let me just jump in and start. So let's start out by reviewing what Jonathan just told us about supported decision-making. It is what is being called a self-efficacy tool. And I'll spend a few minutes on the term self-efficacy. But now that I said that, is that a familiar term to anyone here? What does it mean? Do you feel like sharing what it means? There's someone who raised her hand. If you don't want to be called out, no worries.
It's sort of like being a self-starter, I guess?
That's a wonderful explanation. It's being a self-starter. If you look at this, what is a graphic here, on the upper left, you see that there was the work of a well-known Canadian-American psychologist named Dr. Albert Bandura. And what he quoted from his research was that our ability, our belief in our own ability, plays a role in how we think, how we act, and how we feel about our place in the world. And being a self-starter, the ability to figure out what you want, and then figure out how to get it, even if it's a small thing, like that candy bar sitting on my counter that I really want to eat at some point today, or something obviously more important than that. The ability to make our own decisions is really important to human growth. And as Jonathan said, being able to be in charge, be the decision maker in his own life, is what allowed him to be the CEO of his life. What he said was, I've used SDM my entire life, including my fight against cancer, and I would not be the person I am today without SDM. And here's why. Here's the description of what SDM is. You select a group of adults who agree to be available to advise an adult during a decision-making process. This group is called your supporters. Who's heard that term before, other than from Jonathan? Good, okay, the most important people in addition to the decision maker. All you need is one supporter. Jonathan said he started out with just a few, but gradually he grew his group, and I'll show you how he did that. But typically the supporters have varied life experiences, varied expertise, and they can be anybody. They can be parents, friends, teachers, caregivers, caseworkers, anyone who you know, and the key word, that you trust. And not just the parents trusting, because that's not necessarily important if we're talking about parent-child. Yeah, you're nodding your head. It's the adult decision maker needs to trust those people. Jonathan mentioned that he takes him 6 months when we were talking. 6 months before it would consider someone who he thinks is smart and capable to become one of his supporters. The supporters are chosen by the adult decision maker. This is the person whose decisions they're contributing to, and they're chosen because they're both trusted and respected. And I'm actually going to show you a process for figuring out who you might want to choose. The way it works is that the decision maker calls on one supporter when a decision needs to be made to join a discussion and help them, or perhaps a group of decision makers. But you kind of have your one person who's your go-to person perhaps for social life or finance or hairstyles or whatever it is that's important to that particular adult. And most importantly, with supported decision making, no court has gotten involved. So your supporter team has no legal authority or power to choose your decisions or make you stick with them. And that's an important contrast. I want to take just a minute and talk about guardianship. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because my mentor, Dr. Heather Connors, will be speaking to you about guardianship tomorrow, and she will give you a lot of details. But just in general, guardianship is a different tool. It's less about self-efficacy and more about someone being your advocate, someone getting you involved in making a decision, but ultimately the court has given that power to the guardian to make the decision. So in a guardianship, the court-appointed decision maker is now the guardian. That means there's a decree that dictates the powers of the guardian, what they are entitled to make decisions about. Also the limitations, what the guardian can't do, and the length of time, whether it's temporary or permanent. The courts will specify specific decision-making powers, and those are assigned to the guardian by a judge. If certain powers have not been given to the guardian and the guardian wants them, or wants to make a decision outside of their powers, they need to go back to court. Yes?
So, between guardianship and supported decision-making, because I'm trying to figure out, how to do this, where might power of attorney come in, since it's kind of could be in both?
It's a very good question, and actually a better question for Dr. Connors, frankly, but I'll give you a short answer. Typically, a power of attorney is not automatically appointed as guardian by a judge. And the laws vary in every state, so you need to know what the rules are in your own state. Will you be here tomorrow morning? Will you be able to ask for that question?
I don't know if I have maybe.
If not, at the end of this, give me your name and I'll get you connected. So she can answer that question better for you, okay?
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. So the way that it works is that a guardian is required in most states to meet with the adult as much as once a month. And the guardian observes the adult's life, assesses skills and skill gaps, and takes action to help. The state requires certain reporting, and every state is different. So when you are appointed a legal guardian, even if you are a family guardian, please be aware that, for example, in Massachusetts, there's a care plan due in 60 days that you have to figure out how to complete and get it done in time. There are annual reports. So there is some control that the court has over what goes on in your family. And that's different than supported decision-making at this time. But the heart of this, the heart of the contrast, comes in the terms capacity and incapacity. Because in order for someone to be appointed a legal guardian, the court has to determine that they do not have capacity to make their own decisions and that they have decisional incapacity. And what that means is that professionals have to assess the person's capability and declare that they have decisional incapacity. And that was something that, as Jonathan said, would have crushed him. So one of the most common questions that we get asked is, well, what if there already is a guardianship in place? We did it as soon as my loved one graduated from high school. But now we're seeing all of this exciting growth, or now we're learning about supported decision making. How do they coexist? And we come back to the definition of self-efficacy. Because if you believe that an adult will benefit from having a strong belief in their own capacity, it doesn't matter that the court made a ruling, or that somebody 5 years ago did a report that said that you didn't have capacity. Who cares? You can still have supported decision making and build your own sense of self-efficacy, have your accomplishments, feel the power of your accomplishments, and become a decision maker, as long as you have the right guardian supporting you to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Great. Is that how people are using it? Are you seeing that already? Okay. Well, we are. The good news is we are. We are. So, how do you identify whether or not an adult in your life is a good candidate for supported decision making? Well, this is what trainers do, by the way. We like to create acronyms. So we said, look for a nod. And here's what you're looking for. The A stands for articulates. In order for someone to be the decision maker in a supported decision making team, they need to be able to communicate some way. It could be verbal or nonverbal. It could be written, however they communicate. But they need to be able to discuss their opinions, their values, their issues with the supportive or supporters. That's the first thing you look for. Can this person communicate? Even if it's just on one subject. The second thing to look for is, does this person have other people besides the guardian or the family who could be their network? So the more outgoing or sociable somebody is, the more likely they are to know how to connect with a person who might become one of their supporters. So you look for someone who has a network, or you help them to start building that skill and aptitude to realize who their network is. The O stands for overcoming. When you see someone overcome a hard challenge in their life, that is deserving of a tremendous amount of respect. That's where our power, the beauty of our self-efficacy comes from. And so look for someone who has overcome a small or a large challenge and has been observed taking the steps, learning what they need to learn, trying what they need to try, being willing to fail and make a mistake but not quit. You want that skill and aptitude. The person has to be an overcomer. And then the last one is they have to want it, desire. And it was interesting because when I spoke with Jonathan and Nancy and showed them this job aid, we created it after we first met with Jonathan. And I said to Nancy, who's sitting right here, by the way, who's Jonathan's mother and one of his supporters, I said, how do you know? And she said, you asked them. Well, yeah. But what she wasn't thinking about was she already knew he was articulate. She knew he had the ability to network, and she had seen him overcome. So for those folks who are new to this concept, you can't take that for granted. Just asking isn't enough. Okay? Well, so then the next question is, well, who looks for a nod? Who can notice that somebody is a good candidate for SDM? And the answer is anyone. Even if you do not have, even if you're just observing the behavior of a friend or a friend of a friend or someone in your community, if you identify that you believe somebody has a nod, then do what you can to try and help that person's surrounded supporters or guardians or family to start thinking about the possibility that this could be a way to give the person the power and the freedom in their life that would make them feel whole and in control. Nancy's nodding, I guess I'm doing okay. So then the next question is, how do you build a team of supporters? And I'm going to talk through all 5 of these things for you. The first one is that you identify the aspects of the adult's life where decision-making is required. So you may start out small. The person just wants help navigating a social scene in their community. Or it might be more complex than that, or it might be a long list. And I'll show you a couple of ways people do that. The second step is you identify who you already know, or who the adult already knows, who they would go to, trust to go to for advice. And those are the people that you would ask. You might match the person to a subject if it's possible. The third step is decide how you're going to ask. For some folks, it's easy. It's casual, the person's very articulate, and they could say it over coffee. For others, maybe there's a PowerPoint presentation or a storyboard. I'll show you in a minute what it looks like. Step 4 is then to design a supporter agreement, and this is very important, and I'll show you some samples. But there needs to be some written documentation that says this is what you do as a supporter. And then step 5, you've got to teach them how to be a supporter, because if you are the decision maker, you deserve to set some rules for your supporters. And for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, how did people react when you asked them to be one of your supporters?
Okay, now I know for future reference when to jump in. Okay, so now that I got that out of the way, what was your question again? I had chemotherapy. I have something known as chemotherapy.
It's okay, we all do that actually. So let me see if I remember the question. Now, the question was, you told me that people almost everybody had the same reaction when you asked them to be one of your supporters. What was the general reaction?
Well, I'm the guy that did the coffee thing, so, well, not Lily coffee, can't stand it, but it was generally, I guess, like a sign of trust from them, that I do trust them a lot. And it was very heartwarming moments, honestly, for a lot of that stuff. I remember specifically one of the most recent ones, Morgan, when I was in Washington a while ago for advocating, met up with her, and I asked her after a long conversation about that, and she was a little bit taken aback, but she wanted to know, she was taken aback because she didn't know what to say or anything like that. So she asked if I was really sure, and I asked her, will you be real with me? And she said yes, and I said, all right, that's the only thing you need to do with that. This is what I would need help with. Do you accept? And that's how I got a new supporter.
And the person he's talking about is a very highly respected attorney who is honored. And I think that's what we need to remember, is that people are honored to be part of your support group. So let's look at these one by one. The ACLU on their website has a number of different samples of supporter agreements. I would recommend that you go there, find one, tailor it. They even start earlier than that. They even have some tools there that would help you figure out, what about my life do I want to involve supporters in? So there's a number of tools out there, and the ACLU is a good one. Some people just plain write a list, and that was Jonathan's approach. He made a list of the things that he wanted to be part of his supportive decision-making agreement. And this is not his list, but that's the concept. So it could be, I want somebody to be the person I go to about where and how I should spend my money, or how I can figure out this saving thing, which I personally don't understand at all. Whether or not I should go on my group vacation with the church. I really hate my dentist, but I don't know if it makes sense to change it. There's this girl, Bonnie, in my class, and I kind of think I shouldn't be friends with her anymore, but I'm not sure what to do. I need some support. My mom's telling me I'm wearing makeup wrong, or that I wear too much, or that I shouldn't wear it at all because I'm gorgeous. Is she right? Should I get a job? What job? Is mom right about whether or not I should be going to sports bars? And then this particular person wrote sports, boys, athletes, and getting strong. So apparently that was so all belonged together for this particular individual, not Jonathan. So it can be as simple as just making a list. What are the topics that you would like to start getting support on? And then you ask, well, who might be a supporter? And Jonathan showed you his kind of vision board that showed you his faces and what they do. And this is also in the handouts that are on the tables, on the chairs, and it's also downloadable in the app if you want it. But what it comes down to is thinking about who your people are. It could be your parents, but maybe it's not. Maybe the adult has had enough of support from their parents and they're looking to go outside. Typically, you do see at least one parent in a support team. It could be a mentor, someone who's been your skills trainer from the community. Could be a teacher, it could be someone you work with or your boss. Family members, friends with common interest, it could be your family's financial advisor. Jonathan told us his screening process was 6 months to get to know you. I have to feel a bond with this person, and I need to have a conversation.
If I can jump in.
Sure.
6 months at least.
Oh, good,
Just want to
good.
clarify that.
And as he said, will you be real with me? So, then the question is, how do you ask? And Jonathan told us he just plain sat down and had coffee. Everybody is not that comfortable doing that. So here are some other options. This particular young woman created a vision board to show people how she envisioned this support team, who was on it so far, so that she could then say to people informally, I'd like to ask for your participation in something very special to me. So kind of an opening statement. And here are the reasons why I think you could be an excellent member of my support team. And as we know, most people are honored. Now you've got to create your written supporter agreement. And maybe you do this sooner before you start asking people. You're laughing because I'm not letting him speak?
No, I'm laughing. If my son could do all these things, I mean, it wouldn't be the
Yeah, well, you make a very interesting point. I don't know if you could all hear, but imagine that there's many of you saying, I'm not sure my loved one could do all of these things. And I think what's important to know is that if you believe, if you can look for a nod and you believe you have that, the rest of these can be done because they can be done with help. So it's not the adult becoming a decision maker who has to write the supporter agreement. Someone else can do that. You can download it from the ACLU. The question is just what goes in it, and there's no widely accepted format. It can be simple, or here's a more complicated one. You can see a more detailed sample that has some very big specifics in it. Things like staying safe, homework and friends, choices about my health. But those are all just downloadable, and you can just pick a few. What you will need, and this is not something I can imagine any of us creating on our own, is a medical release form. Look for that in your state. Because the important thing for supported decision making, because it is not the law in every state, you need to be sure that your providers know who they can give information to. And they should be able to give information to a member of your support team who you authorize. The last part is to help them understand what the role of supporter is. And again, no one has to go this alone. We designed a decision discussion template, and it looks like this. I would like help deciding if I should change dentists. Not complicated. Here are the facts. I've been seeing Dr. Gould. She did something weird to my teeth, left this weird gunk. I had to go back and get it removed, and when I did it, she looked at me like I did something wrong. She's weird. I don't like her. So, not super sophisticated, just facts. And then there's feelings. I don't trust her. She makes me uncomfortable. So let me ask your opinions. How many of you think that's enough good reasons to change dentists? Okay, awesome. Most of you. You have to know there's lots of people who think that's not true, right? Because there are sometimes reasons. What were you going to say?
10 minutes.
Thank you. 10-minute warning. Thank you. So here, thank you. So you might. There's lots of people out there who would say that there are good reasons to stay with a really good dentist, and emotions have no place in it, and I'm not taking you to someone different. You can see how that would happen, right? The way to use this to train supporters is to ask the question, what would you advise? I could see you all advised, give Dr. Gould the boot. But then the next question is, what if I ignored your advice and did just the opposite? Because what supporters need to understand is they're not the boss of you. And even though they give you advice, it doesn't mean that you're ultimately going to take it right now. You may decide to stay or you may change, yes.
Nobody ever takes my advice. I mean, ever. New friends. You need new friends. No. Oh, yeah.
So what you just said is nobody ever takes my advice.
Yeah.
But they ask for it, right?
Always.
So it's part of their story. It's part of your story. And so how are you with that? Does that bother you or are you okay with
I
it?
just wonder why they ask, but I mean, it's, I'm sure everybody goes through that.
That's right.
It's life. Everybody.
That's right. It's like supported decision making is life. That's the beauty of it. I do this, I just don't have a formal agreement.
Yeah.
I have a whole list of people I ask about things. So here's another training idea. This more closely mirrors what Jonathan does. He goes to his supporters and says, can you help me create a pros and cons list? So he puts them to work. But think about it as a training exercise, and you've got something simple like Angie wanting to change dentists. So here's the pros. Dr. Gould is convenient, I can walk there. It's open in the evenings, it's affordable. I was okay with it until now. A new dentist could be worse. Who wants to break in a new dentist? And if I stay, I won't have to bother finding a new dentist. So those are the pros. And then there are the cons. She left that white gum, she makes weird faces, she doesn't make eye contact, I feel uncomfortable. You can see in this list that actually the pros of staying outweigh the cons, right? But yet emotionally, we are connected with the idea that dentists are horrible and we should change them because, you know, I know this. The value of this for training is that what we need to understand is we're talking about decision making, and decision making is not linear and it is not permanent. It's complicated. Mistakes can have consequences. They can create emotional and physical setbacks, yet they're part of the human experience. They are part of growing. And for many of us, it's the only way we actually learn stuff. So if there's a guardianship in place or something in place that takes away the ability for someone to make mistakes, you may be shutting off the most important growth tool that exists. We need to expect that someone using STM will make mistakes because that's being human. And we should be giving people the opportunity to learn from our mistakes. What happens when you make a wrong decision? You make another one, right? That's being alive. And so that's what we want to really leave you with our last thoughts. Decision making is complicated. It's not always logical. It often includes all kinds of emotional things, and it's not permanent. And lots of things will change. And so I want to jump in. I know we have just a couple more minutes, and I want to give a chance to address some of these things that sometimes go wrong with supported decision making. And so, because this is where change happens. The very first one on the far left says, supporters fail to support and need to be changed. Jonathan, what do you do if you have a supporter who needs to be changed?
File them.
There you go. Moving on. Providers The big orange one says providers refuse to include supporters in the conversations. What do?
Request a new doctor or leave that specific doctor.
Either ditch the doctor or educate the doctor.
That too.
Either that, you have a choice. Providers focus on the supporters and ignore the decision maker. What do?
Either leave the doctor because they clearly don't value your life or respect it, or educate them.
Excellent. And these are the choices of the person who's the decision maker of their own life. I will say, let me just pause and say for a second, the decision to change the doctor because you don't like the way the doctor talks to you is very similar to that training activity we had. It does require pros and cons. But if it is ultimately the adult decision maker's authority to demand a different doctor, then everybody around them should be supporting that. In the far left, in the bottom, it says complex medical decisions may require planning or more experienced support. So that's where it comes down to sometimes you need more than just your supporters for help. You need research, you need a second or a third opinion, you need more people. It's an opportunity to either build your support network or go outside of it to gather information, just like anyone else would do. The last two are patterns of behavior that we see that are challenges. So one says guardians overrule the SDM process because they're afraid of the risks. And I want to ask you guys, has that ever happened? Have you ever tried to overrule something that Jonathan decided?
Not to my knowledge, but there probably was an attempt where he tried to sway me in a different direction.
So isn't that interesting that he saw it as being swayed? That's a good supporter and a good, obviously a good, parent-child relationship as well. Now we realize that as you're listening to Jonathan and looking at what he's telling you and the materials that he's created, you may be thinking, my family situation is not like that. Or you may be thinking it's right like that, thank you. What we need to be aware of is once you have an appointed legal guardian, the court is giving you the authority to overrule, but you need to really protect an SDM process. So the guardian or the parent has to back down. And the same thing where family patterns of authority override or make it so that the person feels like they can't make a decision. And the answer is that as the family leaders, we need to understand the damage we're doing if we unhook SDM. So in the last minute, some final thoughts. You have this in your handout. Everyone should become conversant, should be able to explain what SDM is and understand how it works. And I hope that what we've shared with you today allows you to do that. It's really all about educating people. And who needs to be educated? The community, schools, providers, and the supporters. Everyone needs to understand the importance of self-efficacy. Look for a nod and encourage others to look for a nod. You could be saving someone's life. As Jonathan said, SDM saved his life. Realize that the topics and supporters that an adult chooses in round one will change dramatically as the years go by. That's a sign of growth. Don't forget to keep copies of your supporter agreements in case a provider needs written proof. We are seeing laws get enacted, laws change that support SDM as a decision-making tool in hospitals, in lots of other important settings. So as those rules change, be sure you have copies. And don't forget to train your supporters so they can be successful. They shouldn't have to figure it out on their own. And that's all we have for you.